The media was wrong. The polls were wrong. The pundits were wrong. But if you listened to Ruthless on Tuesday, you knew exactly what was going to happen on Election Day. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Ruthless.
U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died.
Judge Amy Coney Barrett.
If Joe Biden wins, Democrats can sack the courts.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier.
Maybe that's a question you should ask China.
Anyway, my time's up.
I'm not thinking, Mr.
That's
President.
okay. I know you're not thinking. You never do. It's a whole hoax. And you know who's playing into the hoax? People like you and the fake news media.
We are born free and we will stay free.
All right, here we are, 2 days from Election Day. And wow, a lot of folks, not Ruthless listeners, but a lot of other folks were surprised. You know, who would have guessed?
They are surprised, and they are surprised for a couple of primary reasons. Part of the reason is why we started Ruthless in the first place, because you get your information from a bunch of idiots who have an agenda that they couldn't read a poll if it was laying on their face. And, you know, they have absolutely no idea how politics works. So here at Ruthless, we decided, you know what we'll do? We'll try to break down this information. We'll bring in actual experts.
Yeah, who'd have thought?
Who know how this stuff works, and we'll provide that for our listeners. And lo and behold, Smug, lo and behold, we got the answers.
It's crazy. You know, I mean, you know, thanks again to Parker and Kevin for coming on. We got the top officials from the NRCC and the NRSC, and they absolutely nailed it. They let our listeners know what was going to happen on Election Day, and lo and behold, they were right. It's not a bunch of biased journalists on CNN who spent years smearing the Republican Party, smearing the president, and pushing their agenda. So of course they got everything wrong. They all drank the Kool-Aid over there, and the polls yet again were wrong.
It's just incredible. So there's a couple things that I want to pull out here for our first segment that both Parker and Kevin covered that you literally would not have heard anywhere else other than Ruthless. Parker talked very specifically about their recruiting this year, and that she felt really, really good about the candidates that they had on the field, in particular the women that they recruited and their ability to win in some districts that they previously had not had much success against Colin Peterson, for example. And let me read to you the Free Beacon from this morning. More than 20 Republican women are headed to the House, including 6 who flipped seats to the GOP on election night. Representative Elise Stefanik, a New York Republican who spearheaded the post-2018 push to recruit women candidates, called tonight's victory a smashing success, a sign that Democrats do not have a monopoly over women's votes. Well, you wouldn't have heard that in the New York Times or the Washington Post, but look what we've got here. The House Republicans, who were predicted by everybody from Charlie Cook to the New York Times to the Washington Post and everyone else, they were predicted to lose between 7 and 25 seats. Turns out they are picking up seats. And why are they picking up seats? Well, Parker told the Ruthless audience, because we recruited some really strong women to do it.
Yeah. And I mean, we had a great crop of candidates, but you wouldn't have known it if you were listening to CNN or the rest of the fake news out there who are like, blue wave is coming. This is going to be an unprecedented blue wave. And, you know, thank God, before Ruthless, the poll showed a blue wave, but then Ruthless came out and we saved the Republican Party. So I feel good about that. How are you, Josh?
I mean, I feel great about it because honestly, so our whole goal on Tuesday was to try to get you as informed as possible and then provide you some hype to get out there.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, Ruthless worked.
Yes,
Ruthless
it did.
Worked. We had record downloads.
Yeah.
We had huge social media traffic. People telling us that they were going out and voting, dragging friends with them, just like we'd all talked about on Tuesday. And then you had accurate information. So you sat down in front of your television set at 8 o'clock after the polls closed, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Kevin told me that.
Yep.
Right? Kevin told me that Susan Collins, who had been predicted to be a goner 3 years ago, was going to win. And
that polls of her down 7 and she ended up being up 9. I mean, what the hell was going on there? Like,
just complete clownery. You got to leave it to the professionals, which is why we had Kevin on here. You know, he talked about how Tom, we Kiss and Cal, right? We've talked for 3 episodes. We've talked about Kiss and Cal and how every media organization in the country was ignoring Kiss and Cal and pretending like Kiss and Cal was going to get to the finish line here and Tom Tillis didn't have a chance. Well, guess what? Kissing Cal and his harem of mistresses aren't coming to the Russell Senate office building next year. He didn't make it, folks.
Also, I'm going to give you a shout out for your other call. Remember when Biden said that he was going to stop fossil fuels, and you had Kendra Horn out in Oklahoma, Democrat, in the House of Reps, who tried to distance herself, and you're like, that's a rented seat. We can officially say goodbye, Kendra Horn. Nailed that call.
It's just obvious, right? I mean, you look at some polling. For those of us who've done this for a couple of years, you look at what's happening, and you don't take into account where the energy is at the end of this campaign. We talked about how President Trump closed super strong, right? He talked about the economy. He talked about, like you just mentioned, with fracking with Kendra Horn, where you had basically every Democrat trying to play defense on an energy policy for the last 10 days. And he looked good, whereas Biden was basically hiding in his basement. And I think that had a profound effect in some of these races where Republicans were right on the cusp, right? Yeah. They were basically, they could go either way, win or lose. Tom Tillis is a perfect example of that. Tom Tillis is coming back as a result of that really strong close.
Totally. And, there needs to be a lot of credit given to the folks at the NRSC, SLF, the candidates, the campaigns themselves. This was an incredibly strong campaign that Republicans were running coast to coast. And, we are still seeing Republicans eke out a couple wins. And
yeah. Let's give a quick status report. Now, obviously everything changes by the minute because they're ongoing counting through the day and night. But look, we're still hopeful that President Trump can get a path to victory here. And I'll explain what that would look like. He needs to hold on to the lead in Pennsylvania that he has. There's a whole bunch of litigation there, all of which is very complicated to get onto in the podcast. But suffice to say, the Trump campaign hopes that every legal vote that's cast will be counted, and they're confident that when it is, they'll carry Pennsylvania. Their second point is Arizona. Now, they were really upset with Fox News for calling Arizona super early in the night, and I can kind of understand why. In part, Arizona is super slow at counting election day cast ballots, and what we saw nationwide is that the president had a 60-40 advantage in every state with day of cast ballots. There are 500,000 or more day of cast ballots still unopened in Arizona. So the Trump campaign, I think quite logically, says, let's have a look and see what these things look like before you call any other races, because there's only been 2.5 million votes cast. 500,000 is a pretty big chunk. If he wins 56% of those, he's going to take Arizona. And that's your electoral college max. That gets him to 270. So that's what the process is that's playing out. There's a whole bunch of talk about, litigation, all the various malfeasance. Look, I think at the end of the day, what our listeners need to focus on is the counting of the ballots. Like, tune out the effing noise.
Yep.
And just look at what the results of the comeback. You might not love some of them. You might love some of them. We're still hopeful for President Trump. But we know that all is not lost. We know Republicans have had a super good day in the House and Senate, state legislatures across the board. And so regardless of the ultimate outcome, we had a pretty good day on Tuesday.
Republicans did not lose a single state legislature. They made gains in the House. Also, I want to take this time to thank the minions and everyone who gave to that last minute emergency fund we put together of races that were pretty close. We got Elise, who's in that fund, elected. We got Joni Ernst in that fund, elected. We got David Villadao out in California, who is currently leading. They're at 71% of the votes have been totaled, and he's up 51.4%. So, everyone out there, you made a huge difference. It was a great election showing for Republicans. And, the results speak for themselves.
They speak for themselves. And here's what I'm going to leave folks with on the Senate side, because for starters, Cocaine Mitch rides again.
Let's go.
Cocaine Mitch rides again. Everybody said that he was dead and buried. His opponent had $100 million that she raised, and he hung 20 on her. He beat her by 21 points. I mean, that is, you can spend $100+ million in a Commonwealth of Kentucky and get 37%. I mean,
yeah.
What a master. He just buried her. And Lindsey Graham did the same thing to Jamie Harrison, who raised $100+ million. He hung double digits on Jamie Harrison. So that was great. We mentioned the Collins and Tillis victories. Here's where things stand. As of right now, there is at least one runoff, as we told you there would be, in Georgia with Kelly Loeffler, right? Kelly Loeffler needs our help.
Yeah.
She needs all of us to work for her to get over the finish line. This is the difference between socialism, the Green New Deal, AOC's vision for America, and a stable economy, which we'll get to in a second. The other race is Purdue, and he's right at the cusp of a runoff, right? He's at 50% currently right now. Yeah. There is the chance he does have a lead over that sniveling dork, John Ossoff, who I can't believe people actually vote for that guy.
Yet again, I will remind the world that the Minions trolled that guy into getting married to his girlfriend.
Bullied into a lifetime commitment by the Minions. What the hell do you think he's going to do in the Senate, right?
Yeah.
Talk about a mind of his own. Anyway, that one might slip underneath 50, which would mean we have two runoffs, which is literally for control of the Senate chamber.
Totally.
So we're going to do a lot on Georgia over the next 2 months. That election ultimately is on January 5, 2021, taking it into overtime. But that is really important to keep your eyes focused on.
Yeah, you saw all the Republican wins. It was good to see the party circling the wagons. You got Doug Collins to say he's back in Kelly 100% because everyone knows, we do not want Kamala Harris to be that tiebreaker vote. We do not want to have the Democrats passing their Looney Tunes legislation. So we got to hold the line on that one.
Absolutely. And, part of the reason it's so important is what we saw yesterday, because the Senate Republicans appeared likely to take the majority. What we saw was a market explosion.
Total market explosion. Like you said, Cocaine Mitch rides again, and the markets could not be happier. This was the strongest post-election day rally in the markets in 120 years. That's how nervous everyone was about this blue wave that the media had been pushing. Everyone was expecting, well, God, they're going to pass the Green New Deal. They're going to kill the economy. They're going to pass tax hikes. But Republicans held the line in the Senate. You saw the Dow Jones, the S&P, and NASDAQ put up record post-election gains yesterday. So Wall Street is betting Republicans will retain majority control of the Senate, limiting Biden's ability, if he ends up on top, to raise corporate taxes, roll back Republicans' 2017 tax overhaul, and enact stricter regulations on industries. So that is good news. If we end up with a worst-case scenario of a Biden presidency, at least we have a check on him from Cocaine Mitch.
Totally. I saw an interesting piece by Ramesh this morning.
Yeah, that was a good one. I actually, one of the few things I read. I actually read that.
Yeah, no, it was pretty good. And what he wrote basically was that McConnell, if Biden were to be elected, is basically a chaperone.
It's hilarious. Can you imagine, if we end up with that nightmare of a Biden presidency? I mean, Mitch McConnell will be his nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, guarding everything that you and I and all of the Minions care most about. I mean, they told us what they were trying to do was court packing and everything else, and they're on the cusp of being able to do it. We got to hold them off in Georgia, but it looks really positive. It really does. And the economy. Look, the markets don't lie to you, right? The markets tell you exactly what it is that they're fearful of, that they're excited about. Mark, I will say, having worked with awful lot, and this in the finance community, they're very smart at what they do. Not so smart at political analysis.
It's always great, right? It's always great to see that election after election. You got some of these smartest folks when it comes to crunching numbers, and then it's because of that media bias, man. It's their job at CNN, MSNBC, WAPO, New York Times to push their agenda. And even at Bloomberg, which is what's really heartbreaking, because that used to be just nuts and bolts facts. Even Bloomberg has turned into a total, left-wing apparatus.
Just a complete waste. So, I think if you're in the finance community yourself, do you and your friends a favor, put an arm around them, tell them you're happy about their good fortune, and slide over a copy of Ruthless.
Yeah.
And make sure that they're listening, because frankly, I think it's going to help their portfolio.
I was getting a lot of tweets from folks from Minions saying that they're getting some good wins on Predicted from listening to the Tuesday episode. So
Hey,
literally pays off to be a listener.
it literally pays to be a listener.
And, speaking of paying off and in it for a good payday, Josh, how about you discuss the Lincoln Project? how they ended up faring.
I love when you
day.
just kind of walk over, put a tee down, and set a ball on top of it. These clowns, these absolute crooked clowns. And let me at the outset disclose that I've worked with every single one of them over the last 20 years. Most of them have had at least one shot in the sun to try to accomplish something on behalf of the Republican Party and promptly tripped and split their pants, right? Whether it was the McCain campaign, the Romney campaign, they have lost everything for the Republican Party.
Yep.
And they're looking around, they're out of money, they're out of work, they're out of options. And so, like, what do you do? As everyone knows, the most popular thing you can do as a Republican is to criticize Republicans. You get a ton of media attention, right? So these guys are like, all right, I got an idea. Let's just go hard anti-Trump. So they go hard anti-Trump. They raise a decent amount of money, but that's not enough because it turns out the left doesn't like them either.
And I love this. You saw it. We knew it was going to happen. They were useful idiots. And, once election day came, they're going to get dumped out of the boat by all the Dems. I saw this great tweet from Glenn Greenwald where he was like, LOL, the Lincoln Project people admitting that the whole premise of their grift was a scam. And you all along, of course, these aren't people in their camp. These are people who are a for-profit grift enterprise. And they were floating on piles of resistance money. No matter the outcome, they raised something like $60 million. And what did they do? They started going into Senate races. And well, you see, that clearly didn't work out for them, did it?
Well, that's what I was going to point out is that the left actually was like, we kind of don't like these guys. And so part of their pitch was, no, we're resistance, but we're Republican resistance. And we know how to talk to Republicans. I remember Steve Schmidt on 60 Minutes. It was something like, we're going to use the iconography of the Republicans. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Iconography? I don't even know what the hell that is. I don't know. Maybe is he talking about flag images and things like that? I don't know.
I think what they were going to try to do is just pull the wool over Morning Joe and his listeners and dance around for donations and spend $60 million to come up on 0 wins that they were involved in any of these races. And it was just a clear grift from the get-go. These folks were like facing bankruptcy and tax liens and all this nonsense. And
right.
They're like, hey, why don't we just grift these broken brain libs?
So these fat asses are sitting around and they can't get into the presidential because nobody wants them to play. But like Democrats are pretty good at this kind of stuff. And so they turn to them and say, I got an idea. Why don't you go into Senate races? I know it stands against everything you've ever worked for in your entire life, but how about that? You can get a couple of ducats that way. They're like, yeah, no problem. Where do you want us to go? So they show up in Maine, they show up in Kentucky, they show up in North Carolina, all places that Republicans won. And they're trying, what their claim to fame here is that like, we're going to turn Republicans against Republicans by their iconography.
And can you believe this?
So in all of their success, at the end of the day, they paid themselves $60 million to do the work. And ultimately, Republicans ended up with a 4% gain amongst Republicans than they had in 2016. So congratulations, fellas. Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, we'll close on this. The whole reason they were available is because no Republican campaign would hire them. Bottom line. And that's who, the libs decided to hand $60 million to just light on fire.
The only time they've ever gotten a Republican elected is when they became Democrats. That's it. That's it. I mean, these cats you come by my office and beg for work every 2 years, like just scumbags. Just scumbags. And like John Weaver, I don't know what happened to him. He was a part of the front group for a long time, and all of a sudden he disappeared. Who knows what's going on with him? But that guy, for like 4 or 5 years, got fired from everything he ever did with all kinds of allegations of impropriety. Like, I don't know what's true and what's not. But all
that's a guy who is always just hustling for cash. The dude just needs to make rent.
Yeah. So you know what, fellas? Congratulations. You've helped elect a Republican Senate. You're going to find out the Democrats, there's no home for you there either.
Nope.
They're shopping themselves. Here's another reason to tell all your friends about Ruthless, to rate us 5 stars and give us a review, because these assholes believe that the Lincoln Project is going to become a media company.
Yeah.
And they have a podcast that competes directly with Ruthless. So, I mean, come on, guys. Let's just hand these guys the ultimate humiliation.
As if election day didn't go bad enough for them. You know, I hope those folks learned their lesson. They grifted some cash. Hopefully they paid their bills and saved a little bit of money, because they're going to need it. No one's going to be hiring them ever again. Well, that was a fun little show we had going. We're still waiting on the results of that presidential. Who knows how that's going to turn out?
Yeah, we may do
lawsuits.
We may have some emergency pods coming up if there are big developments. And we're going to keep you updated on all of this stuff. Again, like, we're the only ones that are going to give you the actual real news here.
Yeah. And, this is one thing that really stood out is Trump, who got the most non-white support of any Republican in 60 years, is the world's most unsuccessful racist. It just shows you, the media had this agenda they were pushing for years and years and years, and they were completely wrong, The
world's most unsuccessful racist. It's just hysterical. Every single narrative that the media tried to put on this guy didn't work, right? And Trump, look, again, I hope that he's reelected. I really hope that this path holds and he gets there. Either way, he has taught us some incredibly important lessons. I want to do a full pod on the importance of President Trump.
Truly, huge.
And I think we should do, sometime in the next couple of weeks, regardless of the outcome, I think we should talk about the importance of President Trump to the Republican Party and showing an awful lot of really weak-kneed people how to win.
Exactly. And you know what? That's what this pod is about. That's what Ruthless is about. We're in it to win it. And thanks again for the numbers, folks. We're now on. Josh, you see, I was looking at some numbers our producer was crunching. We are now in the top 5% of podcasts on Earth.
Yes.
So thank you so much to the listeners. Until next time, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. Stay ruthless. We'll see you on Tuesday.